After being abandoned by the man who refused his new shoes, we discovered a laboratory on the deserted island. We heard screaming and we turned and ran. We saw the sea of the dead coming towards us. Her parents were being genuine that day. They came to talk to her about the adoption process and the homeless girl she intended to adopt. The fact that her home was in disarray and she was by herself left her wondering, was it worth it? The back step was an old plank attached to the dilapidated trailer. The air was heavy and dense that day. Her head began to buzz as she could hear the military personnel, tanks, and the men's feet stamp in unison. We followed the clergyman wearing his lowly brown garb. As she sat next to the window, she opened it so she could see his every move. As he entered the small town, he ran toward the entrance of the brothel, where he disappeared. He was on the edge of his seat. She knew he had waited for years, and she could feel the love in the air as she descended the stairs. He provided her with a new garment every day, a flowing, beautiful dress. She had been to this site before, and many rattlesnakes had been killed and sacrificed for their skin. But this day was different. She took off her shoes and she tiptoed through the pit vipers as if they were her friends. They hadn't known each other long, but they slept quietly while the woman rummaged through the trunk of her car. When they woke up, she explained about her dream. All he could do was scream and tell her she didn't know what she was talking about. She missed him tremendously, but the trunk full of pornography changed her mind. As she slept with her new love, she knew that he missed her. This time he was crying, and she could see him on the shed in her dream. Sleeping soundly, she's taken in her dream to where the girl is. She knows who she is. She's crying out for help. So disturbed in her dream, she awakens in tears, only to find out moments later she's gone. She left work at the usual time, just after midnight. She hopped in her car and pulled out from the parking lot. She only lived 5 minutes away. About a half a mile down the road, that's when she saw the 9-foot-tall shadow man take 3 big steps across the 4-lane highway. He stood outside and argued openly with himself. His anger grew noticeably more difficult for him to bear. As his screams filled the air, he shook her awake, and she could hear the air around her go silent. Was this real? And he tapped on her forehead, and he said, "All right, have it your way." The roads were steep and dangerous. The small cars were doing much better than the large trucks on the highway, which would spin out of control and mostly all of them would crash. However, the drivers were in sync. There were 2 small cars. Each of them had 2-way radios with an open channel so they could communicate. And they screamed at each other as the smoke rose from under the ground. And they knew that as they reached the summit of each mountain, that there was another treacherous valley to behold. It was a roller coaster ride. After telling the bus driver about the sexual images that her classmates had drawn, the girl stepped off the bus, not knowing that they were going to surround her and beat her. As the bullies surrounded her, she was at odds. It was 20-1. But the dark-skinned girl stepped out and said, "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." Each and every time there was a school event, the bomb would show up. She would get in her face, chest bump her, point her fingers at her, and just downright bully her.
Acts 19, verse 15. But the evil spirit retorted, I know and recognize and acknowledge Jesus, and I know about Paul, but as for you, who are you? Last night, before I went to bed, and as I always do, I pray. And suddenly there was a shift in the air. And I have a big mean dog. And a dark, shadowy entity moved through the room, and we both saw it. And I started praying even more. I've recognized a shift in the spirit. I've recognized the need to pray and fast more often, and to be around other believers, reading the word out loud and speaking about the things of God. Have you noticed this also? In Ephesians 6:12, we're reminded that we do not fight against flesh and blood, as spiritual warriors, as emissaries for the Most High. The Apostle Paul introduces to the believers in Ephesus the reality of spiritual warfare in our lives. As believers, we're not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this day and age.